ora, I'm Erica Wilkinson, New Zealand's Acting Threatened Species Ambassador, and this is the Doc Sounds of Science podcast. Every episode, we talk about work being done behind the scenes by Doc's technical experts, scientists, rangers, and the experts in between. Kia ora, ko Erica Wilkinson tēnei. He kona I purangi tēnei, e tā ana ki ngā Sounds of Science. Today's guest has over 30 years' experience working with and studying marine mammals. Welcome, Anton. It's great to have you on the show.
Kia ora, Erica. Ko Anton van Helden tōku ingoa. My name is Anton, and I work for the Department of Conservation.
Kia ora. And tell me a bit about your role at DOC.
So I'm the science advisor in the marine species team assigned to looking after Māui and Hector's dolphins.
Fantastic. And how are the Māui and Hector's dolphins at the moment?
Well, it's all a bit variable. We've got one of the most critically endangered small dolphins on the planet in the form of the subspecies, which is Māui dolphins. And we have Hector's dolphin, which, although on the surface may look to be thriving at some 15,000 animals, is split up into a whole bunch of little subpopulations, which are doing better or worse depending on where they are.
Really? And you were just telling me that you're working on an abundance survey.
We will be next year in the second year of our genetic mark recapture abundance survey to create an estimate on the population of Māui dolphins. So this has been running every 5 years, and each survey, because it's a marked recapture, that is, we capture information in the first year and compare that to information in the second year to be able to derive an estimate. So they have 2 years every 5 years. So we're in our third round of those, if that makes sense. And that means that by the end of next year, we will have a new estimate for the Māui dolphin population. Currently, we're working on the basis of there being 63 Māui dolphins over the age of 1, give or take.
Right. Wow. And what brought you there? How did you get started in this field?
So I was interested in whales and dolphins from, I'm going to say, the age of 2. I have a memorable event when crossing the Cook Strait on the Inter-Island Ferry, or as it was then, the Picton Ferry, known as Aramoana. So I was crossing on the Aramoana with my mum. It was a very rough crossing, and I was a bit green around the gills, and my mum took me outside to get a breath of fresh air, and there in the waves were a bunch of dolphins leaping about as if bad weather didn't mean anything to them. And so I was pretty much hooked from that point on. And on television, of course, there was Jacques Cousteau, who was an inspiration to so many of us.
Yeah.
We all had our favourite phrases, and so I imagined that at some point in my life, that I would be
with the red hat.
With my red beanie. In fact, I'm working on I'm also an illustrator, so I'm working on a little story called Shark Cousteau, which is about a great white shark who wears a little red beanie and wears glasses after that childhood hero. So those are things that I want to do, is to come up with silly things to convey stories about our natural world. So that's part of who I am.
That's fantastic. I can't wait to read to see the book when it comes out.
Yeah.
So there was a list of things that you wanted to be when you grew up.
I had a list when I was about 4 of things that I wanted to be. Certainly the top 4 was to be a whale scientist, to be a cartoonist, to be a magician, and to be a chef. And the chef bit is the only one I haven't really got paid to do.
I feel like when I grew up, I wanted to do either musical theatre or working with animals. And I've somehow found something that kind of lets me do them both. But Doc asked me not to sing all the time. But what I was thinking was, you've got very separate paths, like magician and working at DOC. Can you tell me about your other career?
Well, I think that all of these things knit together in some ways, right? Because they're all ways for us to interact with our world and interact with other people. They all involve storytelling and inquiry. We investigate our world in all sorts of different ways. And so learning about magic and how people react and respond to magic is also an inquiry into their psychology and how they interface with their perceptions of reality. In a similar way, when we look at the marine environment, for example, people don't have a direct understanding of how whales work or their place in the marine environment. So we're in a business of having to interpret that for them. And to inquire of that so that we can provide information in a way that not only makes sense, but that encourages them to care about it. Yeah. And ultimately, that's a big chunk of what we have to do, is to how to get people to care. And that brings me back probably to one of my greatest influences as a little kid was going along to, I think I was 3, we went to the Muritai School Fair, and in the Muritai School Hall they showed a film of the Lorax. And, that pretty much entrenched in me, unless someone cares a whole awful lot, nothing's going to change. It's not. There's something tantalizing and magical about working with animals that you almost never see, right? So we have the perception of whales, but we also have, and dolphins, right? Dolphins are small-toothed whales, just in case you stumble over that kind of little taxonomic problem. So we engage with these things, we try and understand them and interpret how they live in the ocean so that we can do something about protecting them. Yeah. But we're having to infer a lot from pretty scant little pieces of information. So much of what we know is just gleaned from a dead animal washed up on a beach. I mean, I had high and mighty ideals of being on the front of a boat wearing a red beanie and, ta-da, there are the whales, and that's what it was all going to be about. But my real love for whales developed more so when I started working at the National Museum when I was 18.
So you must have some sort of magic meets doc kind of stories. Do they ever?
I guess I have magic meets conservation stories, right? And magic meets whale stories. I have a colleague at MPI who loves Bayesian statistics, and I perform every week at the Green Man pub, and so they came along to see me perform. And I'm no Bayesian statistician, and this character loves all that detail and loves how all that works, and for me that's kind of magical. But anyway, at the pub there, I get to perform magic for him, and it was one of those joys of being able to, at the end of the day, say, he's going, how is that even possible? So it's just maths. It's just maths, which of course it wasn't, but that we don't need to tell him that.
But it's magic.
Yeah,
obviously.
yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
But the idea that you could, we could play that little game was kind of pleasing.
And you must have a million stories about your oddest things that you've had to do.
Oh yeah. So over the years, I've collected a number of whale skeletons for the museum, and that's brought me into some pretty unusual situations, not least of all dealing with rotting carcasses, right? It's not everybody's cup of tea. I'd never say it should be anybody's cup of tea, quite frankly, but memorably, my first sperm whale that I cut up with Ramari Stewart. We were down on the west coast at Hector, on the west coast of the South Island. Ultimately, we never got the specimen for the museum, so that's a whole nother story. But we had spent. We arrived, it was one of those things where we'd been told, oh yes, there's accommodation on site, which turned out to be a tent with no ground sheet on a beach. So we didn't have a lot of facilities going for us. But anyway, we were into cutting up this whale with the tools that we had. This was for Ramari and myself. This was our first whale, our first sperm whale that we'd ever cut up. Wow. And so we had set with the challenge, first of all, of removing the jawbone. Now, there's a lot of public attention when there is a jawbone, a sperm whale, particularly a large male. This was a 15.3 metre male sperm whale, and they have large teeth. And so when things have large teeth, they attract a lot of attention. Anyway, it took us the best part of a day to remove that jaw with the knowledge we had at the time. Now with some wonderful other doc staff and things, I think the record is 4 minutes for removing a jawbone. Which
I
is
hope there's
impressive.
A competition for that.
I seriously hope there's not. I think people just need to be really cautious about what they do. It's more about doing it right than doing it quick. But anyway, it took us by the end of it, we were pretty exhausted. It was what we call a dry whale. That's where all the blubber, a lot of the oil has gone from it. It's very fibrous, just really a lot of connective tissue. So it's quite hard to cut through. And anyway, the jaw had gone, and so had most of the crowds. But by the morning of day 2, we faced this enormously bloated beast on the beach. And we knew that if we were going to progress anything at all, we would have to essentially off-gas the animal. That is, that we would have to cut along the belly of the beast and take it as it comes. Well, the joy of this is that there was a local videographer who set up his tripod downwind from where we were and was filming the whole event. So somewhere out there is video of this. But Rāmari and I were cutting along the belly of the beast, and those fibres are tearing and snapping, and little farty noises are coming out as this, and we can feel it's going to go. And Rāmari and I looked at each other and went, yeah, she's going to blow. We nip it and run, right? So we nicked the thing and took off, and it erupted. It was this audible boom as the animal exploded and then slowly drifted downwind towards where the videographer was, who then grabbed his mouth with one hand and his tripod with the other and disappeared into the dunes, and we never saw him again. We heard him for a little while, but we didn't see him again. But anyway, that's learning on the job.
So you've spent a bit of time in the subantarctics. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Well, my first experience of going to the subantarctics was in 1995. We were all gunning to go, and we went down on this German tour boat. So that's one of these nice, associations with tourism, that they will take dock staff or scientists on down to these remote places, right? And that in exchange, I guess, the people get to go ashore or to have a look around. So we get on board, and it's exquisite. You imagine we sit down for dinner the first night, and there's cutlery as far as your arms could reach on either side, and everything was just amazing. And the next morning at breakfast, there were pastries, and it was about as high end as I had ever experienced in my life.
And coming from the tent on the beach as well,
So there are real contrasts in this job. Got to take them as they come. Well, talking about taking as they come, the next night we got stuck in a storm so we left from Lyttelton, and the next night we were south of Stewart Island, and we got caught in a horrendous storm. I think it was like Beaufort 12 for 12 hours or something, 75 knot winds, 14 metre seas, and we were rolling it over 50 degrees. So it was pretty dreadful and a real experience for me. I'd never really been out, out to sea at all. And anyway, my cabin mate, Rob Matlin, who's sadly no longer with us, gave me the nickname the Barking Seal after that experience. The interesting thing is there was a Danish captain, and every time we were going to roll, he was obviously aware that this was going to happen. He would come over the intercom going, "Hold on! Hold on." And so all through the night we had this, and not a single thing was bolted down in the cabin. So the beds were sliding and everything. We were holding on to, I was holding onto a corner of the mattress. Meanwhile, Rob Matlin was trying to keep me cheerful by zipping backwards and forwards across the floor on his bum, just sliding backwards and forwards. But halfway through the night, you go, this is just treacherous time, right? We hear this, the Danish captain come and goes, "Is there a dentist on board?" And you go, "Oh no." We had this vision of them, sending out one of these workers out to, finally paint one of the something on the outside of the boat or something. But anyway, we know, they're going down to Antarctica. Yes, we were being dropped off en route, but they're going down to Antarctica, and someone's got smashed teeth. This is just too hard to bear. But as a consequence of the storm, they decided they'd taken too much time, and so they didn't drop us off at Enderby Island where we were supposed to be dropped off. So perhaps in a roundabout way, with some good fortune, I was a castaway on Campbell Island.
Oh, my God.
So they dropped us off at Campbell Island, which thankfully it was the last year there was a manned weather station at Campbell Island, so we had somewhere to be. And a character called Jerry Clark, who had a little boat called the Totorori, had been with a little crew counting birds around the Auckland Islands, and he dropped his crew at Enderby, where we were supposed to be, and soloed down to pick us up in what was, 6.5 metre bilge keeler yacht. So it's one time in my life seeing this little boat come up the harbour where I thought, I don't want to go out in that. I've just been out in an enormous boat, But that's the thing. But that took me to the subants for the first time.
Wow, what an experience. I'm desperate to know what the dental issue was, but I guess we never found out.
No.
We don't know.
Yeah, unresolved in my mind too. Yeah.
So you work with dolphins a lot. You must deal with the toxoplasmosis situation. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting and complex issue, right? Because here we have hectares of Maui dolphins that are dying from a disease which really is only present in New Zealand because of cats.
Just boggles the mind.
Yeah. And so it's to go to somebody and say, the dolphins are dying because of cats. It's just too big a jump for people to understand. But we need to understand that it's a parasite, right? Cats aren't going out killing dolphins. There's nothing willful about it on the part of the cat. But the cats carry this parasite called Toxoplasma gondii, and it only replicates sexually in the guts of cats. Cats are its definitive host, which means that in the cat's gut, they reproduce by making lots of oocysts or eggs, if you like. Yeah, and these are distributed out into the wild through the cat's feces, and from there into waterways, into soil, and ultimately into the marine environment where it can get into the dolphin. So that's an interesting pathway, right?
It is. So do the eggs have to stay active during that path?
So the amazing thing about this is been described as one of the most successful parasites on the planet.
Not a good.
You'd hope it would be the most fragile, most easily extinguished. No, it's the most successful parasite on the planet, and that these oocysts can persist in not just in fresh water or in soil, but in salt water in the marine environment for at least a year, maybe longer. So, and in soil for, at least for a couple of years. So, this is it's a challenging thing for us to manage, right? Because effectively it's a sort of diffuse pollution problem.
I see. And so what's the answer? I mean, what do we need to tell cat owners or?
Firstly, that let's face it, it's not the cats. Right?
No.
It's the parasite, So we're managing the parasite. But to manage the parasite, we have to consider how we manage cats. We have, there's very limited ways in which we can affect change around cats, and there's obviously a lot of has been historic political
She's a contentious issue.
Issues around cat management. So there's a certain degree, if we know that if you keep your cat inside, if you keep your cat contained and you feed it dry cat food, that it's not going out and eating pest populations of rats and mice or birds that can also carry, because Toxoplasma can get into any warm-blooded creature, right? And the thing, here's the joyous thing. For example, it creates behavioural change in mice, so that when they get the Toxoplasma, it makes them less risk averse and seek out cat urine smell. So mice then willfully wander and look out for their predator.
Oh my God.
So eat me, So there's a whole lot of different parts of this equation that somehow we need to bring together to manage. So if we say, what can we do around managing cats? That's part of the issue. We have feral cat populations that homeowners can do very little about, but we have some responsibility for on
public conservation land.
Public conservation land that also the councils have some responsibility for, but also we have the issue of it getting into our waterways. So, for instance, if you're at home, you don't want to flush your cat's poos down the loo because that's an instant pathway into the water system, right? Well, it's not necessarily going to get to the dolphin because there's all sorts of other things that we can possibly do along the way, like riparian planting and other things that could affect change. But the sad thing, another challenge is that, wastewater, so stormwater is one thing, but wastewater is another, is that there is currently no mechanism that will kill the oocysts. So all the things that we do to our sewage to whether it be UV light or chlorination, doesn't affect the oocysts one jot. So this is a this is a really gnarly little thing, right? And the point is that one cat, we call it a shedding event. So that, and it's most likely that when they're a kitten, they get infected by the parasite, and then it reproduces in the gut of the cat, and it releases all these oocysts into the environment. And a single cat can produce, apparently one cat was recorded producing 1 billion oocysts. It takes one oocyst to infect a dolphin.
Oh,
right?
Gosh.
So,
right.
But at the moment, one of our biggest problems is that we don't understand these pathways well enough, right? Or how to, even it's challenging to measure the amount of toxo in a given body of water, right? So we know that there are things that we could do that are likely to have some benefit to the dolphins, right? But we can't expressly show that it will have a benefit. For example, the population of Maui dolphin is so small that even if you did you were making positive benefit, seeing it and reflected in an increasing dolphin population would be hard to see over any, small measurable period of time.
And they only breed every 2 to 4 years as well, don't they? Or something like that.
Along
so it's a
those
long
lines.
game.
It's a real long game thing. But we have to act quickly because we need to reduce the risk.
Okay, so it's a more of a research side at the moment and needing to act quickly. But are there ways that we're getting better at marine mammal help? Are we is technology changing the game at all?
I look at what we've achieved in the recent TMP, and we're seeing massive extensions to our marine mammal sanctuaries, and that that's a win. We've seen extensions to fisheries protections, although that's something governed by MPI. So, but in totem, that's quite something. But if we look at making change in conservation, it's not about a silver bullet.
No.
When I look at the toxo situation, there's not one thing that we can just go, okay. It's very easy when you're outside of that to say, outside of those processes, to say all you need to do is, right? Like all you need to do is get rid of the cats. All you need to do is stop fishing. All you need to do is, well, it's not an all you need to do answer. There's no silver bullet. It's it's, and a lot of those things are little incremental gains that make up a whole. And so trying to work and pull together those collaborations, whether it be with other government agencies or with regional councils, but also with iwi, who have a really, we have an absolute commitment to, they're our treaty partners, and that's a big part of this conversation. It's another thing to have those conversations. How do you make those things work? And that's a thing that we as DOC are working at. I hardly say it's a thing we've got right, but we have not just an obligation, but a real desire to bring effect to what we say we will do.
That's right.
We've got a really strong rhetoric around around relationship, but you have to relate to have relationship, and it's how you build that is some of those things are hard won.
Yeah. And is that why you were removing the jaw and teeth from the whale for tangata whenua?
Yeah. So in that case, we were in a situation where we were wanting to collect the entire skeleton for the museum, and so, but those are particular taonga that have really strong value, meaning partly because of the nature of the bone itself. I once had this conversation. Yes, you might want to collect the jawbone of a whale, but why would you want to collect the other parts? But I've come to understand that, when it comes to somebody's rights or vision of what they want to do with their animal, it's not my call, right? You can equally carve pumice as you can carve, beautiful dense whalebone found pretty much only in the jawbone or teeth of a sperm whale. So there's different ways to approach it, but it's always around that that conversation. But we've collected a lot of jawbones over the years to have those discussions, and we've had a lot of talks, sat around, had a lot of cups of tea with people to really talk through what these animals, what value they place in them, and not just as animals, but in taonga as ancestors.
Yes.
Right? So it's a very real thing. It's one thing to go and I remember having this great conversation. You have to think very carefully about whether you want to collect a whale, what your responsibilities are to that animal. For instance, talking with Mana Whenua ki Mohua in Golden Bay, and we wanted to collect a whale, and we agreed that we would collect the whole whale, right? Or none of it, right? Initially, so if you imagine, it's quite simple to cut the head off a small whale and collect that as frozen freight. But if you were thinking, that's my grandmother.
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
No, I don't want to do that. I want to treat that with all the possible respect that I can, and that we want to retain and build that relationship. So there's an ongoing relationship between the iwi, the tangata whenua, and their taonga. And that's something that I carry with me all the time. So when I think of the ideas of mana taonga, what it meant for me in terms of building an ongoing relationship with the tangata whenua, it's really encapsulates this idea of that we talk about within DOC and elsewhere, obviously, but as whakawhanaungatanga, which is that we are coming together. We are building an ongoing relationship to build for a greater purpose.
And building it together.
Together. We can't do it on our own.
No.
Right? There's no way that DOC can achieve what it needs to do on its own. Those relationships are fundamental.
Absolutely. So over 80 years, the temperature has been rising. In alpine areas, rats and mice don't get limited by the same temperature restrictions, and they are moving up. So that's bad news for our alpine birds. But what do we know about the potential impact of climate change on marine mammals?
This is an issue which we are grappling with, and we will continue to grapple with for some time. We've seen these hot water events, if you like, where we get incursions of very warm water coming into an area, and that can change the distribution and upset the apple cart for all sorts of things. So that was notable off the coast of Taranaki with the blue whale research that was going on there. And let's bear in mind that that's essentially the same habitat that Maui dolphin live in, right? But there are processes in the ocean which are driven by ocean currents, which are dependent on climate. I mean, if we look at the history of whales, it's tied in closely with changes in climate. But now we're getting it happening at a radical pace, right? The evolution of whales is tied to the opening up of the southern oceans, the changes in seasonal abundance of krill. And at the moment we're seeing expansion of sea ice, but we'll see a reduction in sea ice. That's what climate scientists tell us. And with that, you'll see a reduction in areas where krill can breed because they lay their eggs on the bottom of the sea ice. But they could really upset the balance for large migrating whales that are dependent on that tremendous seasonal abundance. But it can also, there may be changes to current systems and upwelling areas, and so loss of productivity in those areas, loss not just temperature, but also ocean acidification, where you may get changes in how prey develop. Right, so soft-bodied organisms, even squid that have these little things called statoliths that are seen to be altered by changes in temperature and chemistry, and that changes how they orient themselves in the water column, and that may impact on squid populations that enormous numbers of species are dependent on. That we may see, this idea that animals can just move to where it's, marine mammals are big, they can move to wherever there's food, but they are going to try and be where it's viable for them to be. But that may also expose them to other risks. The best thing we can do is try and do what we can to stop anthropogenic climate change. Our role really is to mitigate other impacts on their environment. The more we can reduce the risks from man-made activities on these animals, the better chance they have of being able to handle these sorts of events.
What's something about your work that you wish everyone knew? What can we at home do to help marine mammals?
If people could understand that it's a really complex job, that we all have to, if we can contribute positively towards it. There's a lot of negativity that makes the job harder, to be fair. And I don't know quite how to resolve that, but I do know that it's quite different being inside government to being outside of it.
Sure.
If there are carcasses that come ashore washed up on the beach, can we find out about them in enough time for them to be in a fresh enough state for us to be able to do necropsies and to really determine cause of death?
Right.
And as sad and as horrible as that may sound,
so necessary.
As I said before, it's one of the only opportunities we have to look at that.
Absolutely.
So if there are animals dying and coming up on the beach, we need to be able to find them as quickly as we can. So if people are vigilant around their pieces of coastline, but also not just dead animals, but also sightings. For example, on the east coast of the North Island, we get sporadic sightings of Hector's dolphins. For instance, Doc has an app, a sightings app for Hector's and Maui's dolphins, and so you can use that
and
report, right? And when we get reports of these animals, that allows us to take other management decisions.
Okay, and so I've got the app, I've downloaded it, and then what am I looking for?
Then you're looking for a little Mickey Mouse fin swimming past you, right? So a Mickey Mouse shaped dorsal fin is Mickey Mouse. That's not quite right. Mickey Mouse eared shaped dorsal fin.
Not the whole thing.
Not the whole animal. No, not the whole mouse. That would be really odd. No, but we tend to say that it's got a rounded dorsal fin, but I think lots of people look at a dolphin fin and go, it's rounded, right? But they're looking at just the leading edge.
Yeah, comparatively to a shark, I guess.
Yeah. But if we're talking about the whole shape of the dorsal fin, it's like a little Mickey Mouse ear.
Okay.
Right? A proper little round dorsal fin.
And that's both Māui and Hector's.
Anyone would struggle to determine whether it's a Hector's or a Maui's dolphin based on looking at an animal in the wild. We are looking at genetic differences primarily to determine whether it's a Maui dolphin or not.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming to talk to us today, Anton. I've learnt so much and I feel, this is very cool. Thank you.
You are most welcome.
That's all for this episode. If you like what you heard, show us some love with a 5-star rating. The Doc Sounds of Science podcast is available wherever you get your podcasts, so subscribe now and never miss an episode.